Predatory. Adrian Cross said the word while my marriage contract filled the town hall screen behind him. $45,000. 9 months. My signature beside Claire's. Every ugly fact was 6 feet tall and bright enough for the back row to read. The Whitmore House tenant sat to my left. My sister stood beside Cal, who held our workshop keys but would not look at me. Adrian faced the council. Mr. Reed was bankrupt. Miss Whitmore needed a husband to control the trust. He took her money and earned the tenant's confidence, so their arrangement would look real. The screen changed to a photograph of Claire and me leaving apartment 12B, soaked, my hand against her back. It looked intimate. Worse, it looked rehearsed. He learned their names. He repaired their apartments. He made 72 families trust him not because he cared, but because he needed witnesses. Someone behind me whispered. He used them. Claire started to rise. I took her hand and shook my head. If she defended me, Adrian would call it another performance. If I stayed silent, the contract would become the only truth in the room. There was the trap. He had not forged my signature or invented the money. He had arranged the facts so honesty looked like a confession. Adrian smiled. Tell them, Jonah. Did she pay you to be her husband? The brass key to apartment 12B pressed into my palm. Inside 12B were records proving someone had driven Whitmore House toward collapse, but producing them would not answer the question on the screen. Adrian was lying about the kind of man I was. Claire had still paid me, and I had still hidden that truth from everyone who trusted me. What I did not know yet was that the worst truth about our marriage was still waiting for me. 72 families were waiting for me to speak. So was the woman I had been paid to marry. The truth could save Whitmore House. It would also force me to admit that the life I had begun to choose had started as something she bought. 8 months earlier, Claire Whitmore walked into my shop carrying an umbrella, a leather folder, and the kind of silence expensive people brought into places where everyone else had to explain themselves. It was after closing. Rain slipped through the crack above the front window and tapped into a coffee can on the floor. Cal had gone home. Benny was in the back, pretending to sort clamps because he knew a foreclosure notice was hidden inside my desk. Claire stopped beside my mother's workbench. You are Jonah Reed. You found the sign. I found your debt. She laid the folder beside a row of sharpened chisels. I need you to read something. I charge for estimates. This is not an estimate. She opened the folder. At the top of the first page were our names. Beneath them were the words, marriage agreement. I laughed once. You have the wrong shop. No, I do not. I restore furniture. You also need $45,000 before the end of the month. That number would stop the foreclosure, cover payroll, and keep my mother's name above the door. Claire reached into her coat and placed a brass key beside the contract. A blue enamel tag hung from the ring. 12B. My hand stopped on the workbench. Where did you get that? Whitmore House. My mother and I had lived in apartment 12B when I was 8, before she learned how to turn broken furniture into rent money. It was the last place we lived before a landlord put our chairs on the sidewalk. Claire did not look away. My family trust owns Whitmore House and 2 neighboring buildings. 72 apartments, most of them protected below market rent. And you need a carpenter? I need a husband. Benny appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. His gaze moved from Claire to the contract. You need me to stay? No, I said. He left the rag beside the vise. I will lock the back. When the door shut, Claire folded her hands. My grandfather's trust gives me the controlling vote only if I establish a legally recognized household at Whitmore House before the annual restructuring review. So marry anyone. My former fiancé is the trust attorney. Adrian Cross expects me to fail. If I do, the board can sell the buildings to Halcyon Development. I knew Halcyon. They emptied old buildings, polished the brick, and rented the rooms back to people who had never worried about grocery money. What happens to the tenants? Relocation notices. How long? 30 days. The rain struck harder against the glass. I opened the contract. A legal marriage lasting 9 months. Shared residence. Public appearances. No other relationships. Complete confidentiality. What happens if someone discovers this? We lose. That is not what I asked. Her mouth tightened. The trust can pursue repayment and damages. Can they take my shop? They could try. I closed the folder. You came to save your buildings by putting mine on the table. Yes. The answer stopped me because she did not soften it. Why me? Because people trust you. You do not know me. I know you kept Cal during the slow season. I know you repaired Mrs. Donnelly's table for half your rate after her husband died. I know your mother lived in 12B. My fingers curled against the wood. That last fact was not yours to use. No, she said. It was not. She pushed the key closer. I also know you will hate me if I pretend money is not the reason you might agree. The coffee can beneath the leak gave a hollow ping. I thought about Cal bringing lunch from home because he had stopped buying it. Benny rubbing his hands when he thought nobody saw. My mother sanding chair legs after midnight and telling me pride was useful only until it started charging rent. What do you get besides the vote? A chance to keep 72 families in their homes. And what do I get besides money? Your shop debt paid directly. A room at Whitmore House. Access to the maintenance records. You planned everything. No. Her eyes held mine. I did not plan what happens if you say no. That sentence sounded unprepared. I opened the folder again. At the bottom of the signature page, Claire had added one handwritten line. No lies inside the house. Your rule? My requirement. It goes both ways. Yes. No deciding what truth I can handle. A pause. Yes. If something can destroy this agreement, you tell me before Adrian does. Her hand rested beside the key. Yes. I took the pen from behind my mother's chipped coffee mug. The signature looked wrong before I finished it. Claire released a careful breath. When do we start? She closed the folder and slid the key into my palm. Now. I have clothes at home. Bring what you need. I work tomorrow. You will still work. I sleep badly in strange houses. So do I. Headlights crossed the wet windows. A black sedan waited at the curb. Claire glanced toward it. Adrian sent an estate investigator to Whitmore House this afternoon. He knows I am preparing something. You think he is watching you? I know he is. The key's teeth pressed into my skin. The contract makes you my husband, she said. This key makes you part of the house. I picked up my coat. Neither of us noticed the figure beneath the awning across the street, holding a phone toward the shop. Less than an hour after I signed the agreement, a county clerk with tired eyes asked us to repeat vows beneath fluorescent lights. Claire used a plain silver band from her handbag. Mine came from a drawer behind the clerk's desk and fit only after I forced it over my knuckle. There were no flowers, no family, and no pause long enough to ask whether either of us understood what we were doing. When the clerk pronounced us husband and wife, the brass key in my pocket felt more real than the ring. The sedan carried us 3 blocks before I realized Claire was not taking me to a private estate. The county clerk's stamp was still damp inside the folder on her lap. Whitmore House stood at the end of Ash Street. 6 stories of red brick wrapped around a courtyard where laundry lines crossed beneath old maple trees. The front steps had been worn shallow in the middle. Light glowed behind mismatched curtains. A child in yellow socks pressed both hands to a second-floor window as the car stopped. "This is the house?" I asked. "One of them. It does not look like something your family wants. That is why Adrian thinks the board will sell." A woman with silver braids waited beneath the awning, holding a clipboard against her coat. "Miss Whitmore." "Mrs. Grant." Her attention settled on me, then on the brass key in my hand. "You found someone." "This is Jonah Reed," Claire said. "My husband." The word arrived too cleanly. "Since when?" Mrs. Grant asked. "Since this afternoon." "You expect 72 households to believe you married a stranger between lunch and supper?" "No," I said. "Only the ones standing in the rain." Mrs. Grant's mouth twitched before she turned toward the entrance. The lobby smelled of boiled onions, floor wax, and wet wool. Several doors stood open along the first-floor corridor. A man in slippers paused beside the elevator. 2 teenage girls stopped arguing near the stairs. An older woman lowered her newspaper. Everyone was watching. Claire moved close enough for our sleeves to touch. "They were not told," she murmured. "About the sale? About you. That seems fair." "I was not told about me until an hour ago." She unlocked the former manager's apartment at the rear of the lobby. A narrow sofa faced a fireplace sealed with bricks. 2 doors opened from the hallway. I pointed to the bedrooms. "Separate rooms are allowed?" "Yes." "Then why choose windows facing the courtyard?" "Because Adrian's investigator cannot claim we live somewhere nobody sees us." I set my bag beside the sofa. "You did not pack much," she said. "I signed a marriage contract. I did not surrender my closet. I had clothes brought for tomorrow. Send them back. We have a board breakfast." I own a shirt. Jonah, if your rule is no lies inside the house, do not dress me as a man you would have chosen without the debt. An earring slipped from her hand and struck the mantel. Wear your shirt. A knock came before either of us could move past it. Mrs. Grant stood outside with a wooden chair missing one arm. Mr. Alvarez says Miss Whitmore's husband repairs furniture. I do, I said. It belonged to his wife. He keeps trying to sit in it when he cannot sleep. The broken joint had been repaired twice with nails driven through the grain. I need clamps and hide glue. There is a maintenance room in the basement, Mrs. Grant said. Claire reached for the chair. I can arrange a professional restoration. Mrs. Grant kept hold of it. He is standing here. The maintenance room had 3 good tools, 4 broken ones, and a bucket beneath a sweating pipe. I carried the chair to a scarred bench and began removing the nails. You know this building, Mrs. Grant said. My mother and I lived upstairs, 12B. My hand paused over the pliers. You remember her? I remember a woman who repaired a cabinet door instead of asking why nobody answered her work order. She did not like asking twice. She should have. Mrs. Grant placed the clipboard on the bench. People here are tired of being grateful for what they already paid for. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. Claire appeared with her sleeves rolled up. What needs fixing? Mrs. Grant glanced at the leaking pipe. Choose. Claire emptied the bucket into the floor drain and set it back beneath the drip. It was not a repair, but she did it without calling anyone. Mr. Alvarez has dinner on the 3rd floor. Mrs. Grant said. Folding tables filled the hallway. People had brought dishes in dented pans and plastic containers. Conversation dipped when Claire entered. Mr. Alvarez rose slowly. You came. You reported a hazard. I report one every week. You usually send an email. His gaze moved to me. And this is the husband, Jonah Reed. I know the shop. Your mother fixed my wife's cedar chest. He pulled out a chair. Sit. Nobody asked how we met. They asked whether the elevators would survive winter, why the laundry room window still would not close, and whether the sale rumors were true. Claire answered carefully. No vote has been scheduled. That is not what we asked, Mrs. Grant said. If Halcyon gains enough support, they will make an offer. And you married him to stop them? A girl near the window asked. I married Jonah because I chose to, Claire said. Every person at the table knew it was not a complete answer. So did I. Mr. Alvarez passed me a bowl of rice. My wife used to say a marriage is 2 people telling the same story without rehearsing it. Claire's glass clicked against her ring. When did your wife die? I asked. 3 winters ago. I will bring the chair tomorrow. His eyes dropped to his plate. You saw it? I started the repair. He nodded once. A boy showed me a drawer that would not close. Mrs. Grant listed apartments with loose railings. The girls near the stairs asked if my shop taught apprentices. Claire stopped trying to answer for the building. She listened. Later, while we carried empty dishes downstairs, she said, You gave them too much. I promised 1 chair and looked at 1 drawer. You let them think you can fix everything. I let them tell me what is broken. Those are not always different. Her hands shook beneath the plates. I took them before she dropped one. Why does it scare you when people ask for things? Because they never stop. The inspection did not come the next morning. Mr. Alvarez received his chair. Mrs. Donnelly received a repaired railing. The girls by the stairs began spending Saturdays at my shop, learning how to sand with the grain instead of against it. Weeks became months. Claire and I kept separate bedrooms, but the apartment collected shared habits. She left tea beside my invoices when I worked late. I learned which board meetings made her pace and which tenant names made her stop pretending not to care. At first, she answered every complaint with policy. By spring, she carried a notebook to the residents' dinners and wrote down what she did not know. I repaired what I could. For what I could not fix, I found people who could. The tenants stopped calling me Claire's husband and began calling me when a drawer stuck, a window rattled, or someone needed a ride to the clinic. Adrian watched all of it. His investigator photographed us at fundraisers, in the courtyard, and once through the diner window while Claire laughed with her hand over her mouth. Near the end of the 8th month, I came home to find a folded blanket on the sofa and an old mug on the table. Claire touched the mug. My father used to drink from this. A white envelope rested beneath it. The estate investigator would arrive at 7 the next morning to verify that our household was genuine. A handwritten note filled the bottom margin. Separate interviews. Bedroom inspection. Personal history review. Claire sat on the edge of the sofa. They are not supposed to have authority for a bedroom inspection, but Adrian thinks we will allow it. He thinks I will panic. Will you? She stared at the mug. I usually do it where nobody can see. Pipes knocked behind the walls. I placed the brass key beside the letter. Then tomorrow let him see something else. The investigator arrived 12 minutes early, wearing a navy coat without a drop of rain on it. Claire had already placed 2 coffee cups beside the sink. One held coffee, the other held tea I had not asked for. You do not drink coffee after dark, she said. It is morning. You were awake after dark. A knock landed against the door before I could answer. Claire touched the ring on her finger, then opened it. The man introduced himself as Owen Pike, an independent examiner retained by the Whitmore Trust. He carried a narrow black case and called Claire Miss Whitmore after seeing the marriage certificate on the table. Mrs. Reed, she corrected. Pike noticed the hesitation between us. He began with separate interviews. Claire went into the kitchen. I stayed near the fireplace while he opened a notebook. What did your wife eat last night? Rice, roasted chicken, and half a piece of pie she pretended not to want. What side of the bed does she sleep on? We have separate rooms. His pen stopped. The trust requires a stable household. It does not require matching pillows. Do you understand how that may appear? I understand how much you wanted a different answer. He wrote longer after that. From the kitchen, a cabinet closed too hard. Pike asked where Claire kept her medicine, which tenant had first met me, and what she did when she could not sleep. Some answers had come in one night. Others reminded me that our rings had arrived faster than trust. When we changed places, Claire brushed past me in the doorway. Her fingers caught the edge of my sleeve for less than a second. I waited in the kitchen with the tea. Pike's voice remained low, but the apartment carried sound through the old vents. What did Mr. Reed's mother die from? Claire did not answer immediately. He did not give me permission to discuss that. What was her name? Margaret Reed. When was his last serious relationship? That is not relevant to residency. It is relevant to motive. A chair scraped. Claire's tone sharpened. You were sent to determine whether we live here. You were not sent to inventory. His grief. Nobody had defended my silence without trying to fill it before. Pike emerged with less patience than he had brought in. He inspected both bedrooms, the bathroom cabinet, and the coat hooks near the door. He found my work boots beside Claire's umbrella, and my shaving kit still closed inside my bag. At the threshold, he turned. Mrs. Reed, the board may request additional verification. Claire held the door. Then the board can request it in writing. The latch had barely settled when water began hammering somewhere above us. A woman shouted in the corridor. Mrs. Grant ran past carrying towels. 12B, she called. The ceiling is coming down. The brass key was already in my pocket. We took the stairs. Water poured beneath the apartment door and spread across the landing. Mrs. Grant shoved a bucket toward me. The shutoff in the basement is frozen. Claire, call the fire department and the emergency plumber. I can help here. You can help by getting every apartment below this one checked. She did not argue. Inside 12B, brown water spilled through a crack above the kitchen window. The apartment had been empty for months, but an old wardrobe still stood against the bedroom wall. I climbed onto the counter, pulled away a loose strip of plaster, and found the supply line shuddering behind it. Someone had wrapped the pipe with cloth and painted over the stain, a temporary repair made to look permanent. Mrs. Grant held the flashlight. How long has that been there? Long enough for the cloth to rot. The valve refused to turn. I braced both hands around it and felt the metal give one hard inch. The water slowed. Below us, doors opened and voices traveled up the stairwell. Claire returned, soaked to the knees. 2 apartments have damage. Everyone is out of the rooms beneath this line. Maintenance records. In the office. Bring the work orders for this unit. Her expression changed. There are none. Mrs. Grant lowered the flashlight. I filed 6. Claire wiped water from her face. I checked before the restructuring review. 12B showed no active requests. Then someone cleared them, Mrs. Grant said. The plaster above me broke loose. I turned, caught the edge with my shoulder, and knocked the wardrobe sideways. Its back panel split against the floor. Folders tied with cotton tape slid from the hollow space behind it. Mrs. Grant whispered a name. Lila. Who is Lila? I asked. The manager before me. Claire crouched beside the folders. She resigned after an accounting dispute. She was blamed, Mrs. Grant said. There is a difference. The top folder held maintenance requests, stamped received, then canceled in red ink. Apartment 12B appeared again and again. Leaking pipe, soft plaster, window frame separation. Mold inspection requested. Each request carried a handwritten notation. Deferred pending capital review. The initials beside the notation belonged to Adrian Cross. Claire sat back on her heels. He told the board these repairs were never reported. I untied the second folder. Inside were copies of meeting minutes and contractor estimates. The estimates showed repairs would cost far less than Adrian had told the board. Someone had altered the totals before the vote. Mrs. Grant pointed to a sheet near the bottom. This one. The paper had yellowed around the edges. A work request from years earlier. Apartment 12B. Cabinet hinge broken. Bedroom radiator failing. Child in residence. The tenant's signature read Margaret Reed. My mother's handwriting leaned right, the way it did when she was angry but trying to remain polite. Beneath her request, someone had written, "Tenant advised to perform minor repair independently. No service required." The paper trembled against my wet fingers. I remembered my mother kneeling beside that cabinet with a borrowed screwdriver. I had never considered that she had asked for help first. Claire reached toward the page, then stopped before touching it. "I am sorry. Do not apologize for a note written when you were a child. My family owned the building, and mine lived in it." The pipe groaned behind the wall. A camera shutter clicked from the doorway. Pike stood in the hall with his phone raised. Behind him was Adrian. His coat was open, his hair damp at the temples, and concern arranged perfectly across his face. "What happened?" Claire asked. Adrian's gaze moved from the broken wardrobe to the files spread across the floor. The concern disappeared for a second. He knew what we had found. Then, his eyes settled on my hand over Claire's shoulder. "An empty apartment," he said. "After midnight would have photographed better, but this will do." Pike lifted the phone again. Claire rose. "These files contain altered trust records." "Do they?" Adrian stayed outside the apartment. "Old paper found by your new husband inside a building you need him to help you control. Be careful what story you decide to tell with that." Mrs. Grant stepped between him and the doorway. "I filed those requests." His smile arrived a moment late. "Then, we should verify why they were hidden." He turned to Pike. "Document everything." Pike photographed the folders, the burst pipe, Claire's wet clothes, and me holding my mother's request. Adrian never crossed the threshold. He did not need to. By noon, the board had copies of the photographs. By evening, a message spread through Whitmore House saying Claire's paid husband had broken into a sealed apartment and planted records to stop the sale. The evidence had finally appeared. Adrian had already begun writing the story around it. The notice for the emergency meeting went out before the water had dried beneath apartment 12B. By late afternoon, the trust had moved the hearing from its private conference room to the town hall. Adrian called it transparency. Mrs. Grant called it a hanging with better chairs. Claire spent the drive reading a statement she had rewritten until the paper had softened at the folds. "Do not mention the hidden files until Evelyn confirms the chain of custody," she said. Evelyn Shaw, the attorney Claire had hired after the leak, sat in front with 2 sealed evidence boxes at her feet. "Adrian will claim anything handled by Jonah is contaminated," Evelyn said. "I wore gloves. You were also inside an apartment the trust says you had no authority to enter." "I had a key." Claire stopped reading. "They will say I gave it to you, so you could manufacture evidence." The brass tag rested in my pocket beside my mother's repair request. "What am I allowed to say?" "The truth," Evelyn said. "Only not all of it tonight. That had always been the trick. People told you to be honest, then handed you a list of truths too dangerous to say." Town hall had already filled when we arrived. Tenants from all 3 buildings sat beneath fluorescent lights. Board members occupied a raised table. Reporters had claimed the aisle seats. Tess stood near the exit in her work coat. Cal was beside her with the workshop keys looped around one finger. I crossed toward them. "Tell me the contract is fake," Tess said. "It is real. You took money to marry her?" "I took money to keep the shop open." "You could have called me." "And asked you for what?" "The chance to know you were drowning." Cal kept his attention on the keys. "The bank called. They want confirmation the payment was legitimate." It was. They asked something else. A council aide called Claire's name. Tess caught my sleeve. "Mom spent her whole life making sure nobody owned us." "I know. Then why does a Whitmore own the paper that saved our shop? Claire took the seat beside me. Evelyn sat on her other side and placed one evidence box beneath the table. Adrian entered, carrying a remote control. The board chair announced credible allegations concerning Claire's household and the disputed maintenance records. Adrian asked permission to present the timeline. Nobody asked whether Claire objected. The screen behind him lit with our marriage agreement. My name. Claire's name. The payment. The term. Then came photographs of me carrying Mr. Alvarez's chair, repairing Mrs. Donnelly's rail, and guiding Claire out of apartment 12B with my hand against her back. Adrian arranged the images into the same accusation he had prepared before we entered. Claire had bought a husband, and I had turned kindness into evidence that the marriage was real. He called it predatory. The word moved through the hall until someone whispered, "He used them." Mrs. Grant rose to say she had asked me to repair the chair. Adrian used her defense as proof that his plan had worked. Claire pushed back her seat, but Evelyn caught her arm. "If you defend him now, he will call it coordinated." Adrian replaced the photographs with my foreclosure notice, the balance circled in red. Mr. Reed disclosed nothing to his family, employees, or the tenants whose trust he cultivated. Cal finally raised his head. I had seen that expression when my mother died, and I opened the shop the next morning. He had known I was hiding inside work. Now he knew I had hidden the work itself. Adrian faced me. "Tell them, Jonah. Did Claire Whitmore pay you to become her husband? Say nothing. Return the keys. Take my tools before the bank changed the locks. Leave, before anyone could watch me lose another home." My hand slipped into my pocket. The brass key pressed into my palm. Beside it, my mother's request folded against my fingers. She had asked for help. They had written that she did not need it. "Yes," I said. The microphones carried the word farther than I intended. Adrian waited. "Yes." She paid me. A reporter's camera began clicking. Claire turned toward me. Her face did not ask me to rescue her. Adrian moved closer. "And did you know her control of the trust depended on people believing the marriage was genuine?" "Yes." "And did you present yourself to these tenants as her husband?" "I am her husband. On paper," Adrian said. Evelyn slid me a note. "Do not argue motive." Adrian changed the screen to a message from the resident group. "Jonah fixed the rail outside my door. Claire finally brought someone who listens." He read it aloud. "How many acts of generosity does it take before a paid arrangement begins to look like devotion?" Mrs. Donnelly covered her mouth. I stood. "I should have told you there was an agreement." "A confession is not an explanation," Adrian said. "I was not speaking to you." He stopped. I faced Mr. Alvarez. The chair was not part of the contract. His hands rested on the repaired arms. Neither was Mrs. Donnelly's rail. A man near the aisle called, "But the marriage was." "Yes." The word cost more the second time. I signed because my shop was failing. I moved into Whitmore House because Claire needed a household. I did not tell you, and that gave Adrian the chance to make every decent thing I did look calculated. "Was it?" Tess asked. "No." Adrian lifted the remote. "You expect them to accept that because you say it now?" "No. I expect them to decide after they know what was found in 12B. He clicked the screen dark. "The alleged records are under legal review. I saw your initials." His smile held, but it arrived late. On papers discovered by a man being paid to save Claire's vote. Adrian requested a restriction barring me from trust properties until the investigation ended. Claire stood. "You cannot remove a lawful resident without notice. The restriction concerns tenant spaces and records," Adrian said, "unless you wish to argue that your husband's services are essential to the performance." If Claire fought for me, she confirmed his story. If she stayed quiet, the tenants would watch her sacrifice me. Her lips parted. I touched the back of her hand and shook my head. The board voted. Only Mrs. Grant spoke before the decision. "You are barring the man who stopped the water while keeping the lawyer whose initials were on the broken pipe." The restriction passed anyway. A security officer waited beside the aisle. Cal removed the workshop keys and placed them in Tess's palm. "I need a day," he told me. Then he walked out. The officer escorted me through the lobby while cameras followed. Outside, rain had begun again. Behind the glass doors, Claire remained at the front table because leaving with me would become another photograph. My workshop keys were with my sister. My home key opened a building. I was no longer allowed to enter, and 72 families had just watched the truth turn me into a stranger in every place I had tried to protect. Claire came to the workshop through the alley after midnight, carrying a paper bag and wearing the same coat she had worn at town hall. Tess had let me inside long enough to collect clothes and the ledgers the bank might ask for. She stayed in the office with the door shut, giving us privacy without pretending she trusted either of us. Cal's mug sat beside the sink. Benny's radio was unplugged. My mother's chisels remained in their rack, each handle turned the same direction. Claire stopped near the finishing room. I brought food. I am not hungry. You have blood on your hand. Someone had thrown a stone through the rear window after the hearing. One thin shard had opened the side of my palm while I moved a crate away from the broken glass. It is nothing. She set the bag down and took a clean rag from the shelf. Sit. You do not get to give orders here. No, but you are dripping on your mother's workbench. That made me sit. The finishing room was barely wide enough for a stool, a wash basin, and shelves of varnish. Claire closed the door until only a strip of light remained from the shop. She rinsed the cut beneath the tap. Her fingers were careful. Mine stayed stiff. What did the board do after I left? They suspended access to the records. And you? I was told not to leave town. She dried my hand and opened a small first aid packet from the paper bag. Beneath it were 2 sandwiches, an apple, and a carton of soup. You planned for the cut? I planned for you refusing dinner. She wrapped gauze around my palm. The pressure hurt less than her knowing I would refuse. Tess, said Cal, asked for a day. He earned one. So did she. I know. Claire tied the bandage and left her hand beneath mine for a second too long. Adrian's voice was gone. There was only cedar dust and her thumb resting near my wrist. I wanted to turn my hand over. Instead, I pulled it back. Why did you choose me? Her shoulders changed before her face did. We discussed this. No. You told me people trusted me. They do. You knew the exact balance on my loan. You knew Cal and Benny could not afford to lose their jobs. You knew about my mother and 12B. Yes. How? Claire folded the empty wrapper into smaller squares. A private investigator. The tap dripped once. How long? 11 days. You followed me for 11 days before walking into my shop. I needed to know you were safe. For whom? The tenants. The trust. Me. You could have asked. A man can answer a question any way he wants. So you preferred a report he never knew existed. Her gaze dropped. I saw you leave cash beneath Mrs. Donnelly's invoice. I saw you drive Cal home when his truck failed. I saw you turn down a larger job because Benny's daughter had a school performance. You had no right to that. No, you keep saying that after you take something. She flinched, but did not defend herself. I pushed one sandwich toward her. Keep talking. The investigator found the foreclosure filing, your medical payments, the payroll transfers you covered from your personal account. Claire gripped the stool. I knew you would think of your employees before yourself, and that made me trustworthy. It made you predictable. The word landed cleanly because it was honest. I stood too fast and struck my hip against the sink. You did not choose a good man. You chose a trapped one. I chose both. That is not better. No. She moved aside instead of blocking the door. I stayed because leaving would have been the old answer. Let the other person finish the story alone, then punish them with absence. What else? There is an indemnity provision attached to the confidentiality clause. I read the penalties. You read the summary. My bandaged hand closed. What does the full provision say? If the marriage is declared fraudulent, the trust can pursue losses linked to the arrangement. You told me they could try to take the shop. Yes. What did you leave out? The payment created a secured interest. Say it without legal language. If the trust wins a judgment, Reed restoration could be taken before your other assets. The faucet dripped again. I heard my mother sanding in the back of my memory. Slow strokes after midnight. You put my shop up as collateral. The agreement did. You wrote the agreement. My attorneys did. At your instruction. Claire closed her eyes. Yes. And you let me sign the summary because the full language might make me leave. Yes. The answer did not come polished. That made it worse. I can survive being poor. I know. No, you do not. I can sleep above the shop. I can start again with borrowed tools. What I do not know is whether I can survive finding out you chose me because I was trapped. Her mouth trembled once. I told myself 72 families made it necessary. That explains the decision. It does not clean it. I know. You used Cal, Benny, and my mother as reasons I could not walk away. I know. Stop saying that like knowing is the same as taking responsibility. Claire removed a folded document from her coat. I called Evelyn before I came here. She placed it beside the soup. It revokes the secured interest and releases your shop from every repayment claim connected to the marriage. I signed it. The trust has not. Then it is paper. I am calling an emergency vote in the morning. And if the board refuses, I will waive my personal claim and use my shares to cover the payment. You may lose the buildings. Yes, you planned this after the hearing. I should have done it before I met you. Claire took one step closer. I did not expect you to care about the tenants after you signed. I did not expect you to keep the chair in your shop overnight because the glue needed warmth. You did not expect me to become inconvenient. I did not expect you to become someone I could hurt. Her fingers rose toward my face. I caught her wrist before she touched me. Her pulse beat beneath my thumb. Do not, I said. I am sorry. Not while one of us is still paying the other to stay. The words left a space between us wider than the finishing room. Claire lowered her hand. I can stop the payments. That is not enough. What is? Ask me again when the papers are dead. She nodded once. No argument, no promise that love made the contract harmless. Claire picked up the unsigned release. I will bring you a fully executed copy, and the investigator's report. Her grip tightened. You want it? I want every page you bought about me. You may hate me more after you read it. That is no longer your decision. At the door, she paused beside my mother's chisels. I did choose you because you were trapped, she said. I also chose you because every person with less power around you kept more dignity after you left. I said nothing. She did not ask me to believe the better reason. After she went, I opened the paper bag. The soup had cooled. One sandwich was cut unevenly, as if Claire had made it herself. Tess stepped out of the office and placed the workshop keys beside the apple. You staying here tonight? Yes. Is she? No. Tess waited. Was that your choice? I touched the bandage around my palm. This time, yes. Claire returned the next morning with Evelyn Shaw and a document bearing 3 signatures. I was asleep in the chair beside the finishing room, my boots still on and the untouched soup on the bench. Evelyn placed the document beneath my bandaged hand. The trust has released every claim against Reed Restoration connected to the marriage agreement. I read each page. Claire's signature appeared first. Her younger brother, Martin Whitmore, had signed beneath it. The final name belonged to a board member who had voted to withdraw me from the buildings. The secured interest is dead? I asked. Dead, Evelyn said. The payment already made cannot be reclaimed through the shop. And the rest? Claire removed an envelope from her bag. The remaining installments have been canceled. I opened it. The marriage remained legal, but every financial obligation between us had been suspended at Claire's request. You did this before the vote on the buildings. Yes. You may lose control. Yes. She did not make the tenants carry the sentence for her. Evelyn pulled out another letter. The bank has frozen the debt restructuring until it determines whether the first payment involved misrepresentation. Tess stepped from the office. They called before sunrise. The city called too. Reed Restoration had been selected to repair the oak benches in the courthouse annex. The work would have covered wages through winter. The city preservation office had suspended the contract pending an ethics review. Benny stood near the loading door with his lunch pail. Am I working today? Yes, I said. Tess folded her arms. On what? The shop held unfinished chairs, 2 cabinet doors, and a hotel desk waiting for approval. None would cover payroll, inventory, repairs, anything already paid for. Benny nodded, as if that settled it. It did not. Evelyn tapped the bank letter. You need separate counsel. Claire and the trust may have conflicting interests. I thought you represented us. I represent the evidence review. I do not represent your marriage. Claire's jaw tightened, but she did not object. Evelyn handed me a card. Call this attorney before speaking to the bank, the city, or Adrian. What about the files from 12B? They are sealed. The originals are being examined. And the tenants? You are still prohibited from entering trust property. The brass key hung from a nail beside my mother's apron. It opened a home I could not legally approach. Claire followed my attention. I can arrange somewhere else for you to stay. No, the apartment above the shop has no heat. It has a radiator. It has a radiator that coughs rust. I know how to repair things. That is not the same as having somewhere safe. Tess set the workshop keys between us. Neither is being housed by someone who can change the terms. Claire accepted the hit. I was offering a hotel. With whose money? I asked. Mine. No, Jonah. This is not part of the contract. It would still be you deciding what I need and paying before I agree. She put the hotel card back into her bag. What can I do? Give Evelyn every record tied to Adrian. Do not choose which pages protect me. I already authorized full access. And do not come here with another solution you built before asking the question. Claire's fingers closed around the bag handles. All right. She left without asking whether I wanted her to stay. By noon, I had moved a narrow cot into the apartment above the shop. The space smelled of dust, cold brick, and the onions Cal used to fry during late jobs. A sink occupied one corner. The radiator struck twice whenever the boiler started, then went quiet. Tess carried up blankets. You could stay with me. I know. Do you? She dropped a pillow onto the cot. You keep turning every offer into a test of whether you can survive without us. I am staying 10 feet above you. That is geography, not trust. I tightened a loose bolt on the cot frame. Tess took the wrench from my hand. Mom did not make us independent, so we could become impossible to help. She taught us not to owe people who use the debt. Claire is not everybody. No. That is the problem. Tess sat on the windowsill. Do you love her? The boiler started beneath us. I signed papers with her. You did not answer me. I do not know what belongs to me yet. Tess returned the wrench. That is the first honest answer you have given me. Cal came back after lunch. He placed his mug in the sink and hung his coat on the usual hook. Your day finished? I asked. No. You left the meeting. I did. You gave Tess the keys. Did not trust myself to keep them. He opened a drawer and removed his gloves. My wife thinks I should quit. Maybe she is right. Probably. She usually is. He pulled on the gloves. I needed to know whether you lied because you were ashamed or because you planned to use us. And? Men who plan to use people do not sleep above a freezing shop after the money stops. That is not proof. No, it is enough for today. He switched on the bench light. Benny turned the radio back on. Their return did not solve payroll. It only made the cost of failure easier to see. The new attorney arrived near closing. Marisol Dane wore flat shoes dusted with road salt and carried no sympathy in her expression. She reviewed the contract, the release, and my mother's repair request. Adrian will offer you an exit, she said. What kind? One that protects the shop and requires you to confirm Claire designed the marriage to deceive the board. She did design it for that. Legal truth and complete truth are not always the same thing. I am learning. If you sign before the records are authenticated, you may save your business and destroy her credibility. And if I refuse, the bank could foreclose before the hearing. The city may cancel the bench contract. You may also be named in a fraud complaint. Claire arrived as Marisol finished. She remained near the door. I found Lila Bennett. Mrs. Grant had given us the former manager's name. Claire had spent the day tracing old payroll files. She is living outside the county, Claire said. She agreed to speak with Evelyn. What did she say? That Adrian blamed her for altering maintenance totals. Did she do it? No. Claire removed a small recorder from her pocket. She says I knew enough to stop him. Marisol leaned forward. Did you? Claire faced me. I knew Lila disputed the report. I let Adrian call her unstable, because I needed his vote on another building. You let him ruin her. Yes. And now, you want her to save you. No. I want her to tell the truth, even if it ends my control of the trust. A knock struck the loading door. Cal opened it. A courier handed him a white envelope, addressed to me. Inside was an agreement from Adrian. The trust would withdraw every claim against the shop. The bank would receive immediate payment. The city contract would be restored. In return, I had to state that Claire recruited me to create a false household, and that every interaction with the tenants had supported that plan. A pen had been clipped to the signature page. Claire read over my shoulder. You should consider it. Marisol turned toward her. Do not advise him. I am not. Claire stepped back. If he loses the shop because of me, the contract is still controlling him. I placed the agreement on my mother's workbench. Adrian had finally offered me a way to protect everyone without asking for help. All I had to spend was the truth of why I had stayed. The agreement from Adrian stayed on my mother's workbench through the night. By morning, the pen clipped to it had rolled beneath her chipped coffee mug. I kept finding reasons not to touch either one. Cal sharpened plane blades near the back wall. Benny sorted hardware into jars that did not need sorting. Tess sat in the office with the bank on speakerphone. The payment was lawful when received. The banker found another way to say no. When the call ended, Tess closed the ledger. They are sending an appraiser. How soon? Tomorrow. Cal stopped sharpening. An appraiser meant the bank no longer cared whether the shop survived. It wanted to know what the building, machines, and tools would bring after we failed. Benny screwed a lid onto an empty jar. My daughter says I can stay with her. You are not losing your job today, I said. He kept turning the lid. After it was tight, Tess picked up Adrian's agreement. You sign this. The bank backs off. That is what he says. It also says Claire created the marriage to deceive the board. She did. It says you repaired the apartments to create false witnesses. I did not. Tess laid the pages flat. Then cross out the lie. It does not work that way. No. It works the way you always let it work. Somebody puts the worst choice in front of you, and you decide suffering quietly makes it noble. The front bell rang. Lila Bennett entered with Evelyn and Claire behind her. Lila was smaller than I expected, wrapped in a green coat with one button missing. A scar crossed her chin. She carried a canvas file bag against her chest. Mrs. Grant had spoken of her like a woman buried beneath an accusation. She did not look buried. She looked tired of digging. I was told the originals were found, Lila said. They are under review, Evelyn replied. Lila placed the bag on the bench. These are copies I kept after Adrian locked me out. Claire remained near the door. Lila noticed. You still stand behind him when you are afraid. Claire moved aside. You were right about the maintenance totals. I was right about more than that. Evelyn switched on a recorder. Lila opened the bag. Years earlier, Adrian had instructed her to delay repairs until the buildings appeared financially unsustainable. He told contractors to inflate estimates, then use those estimates to argue for a sale. When Lila refused to alter a report, Adrian accused her of moving trust money into an unauthorized account. Did you? Evelyn asked. I moved emergency funds to pay for heat when the board delayed approval. Without authorization? Yes. I broke the rule because families were sleeping in coats, Lila said. Adrian used that to make every other accusation sound true. Her eyes settled on Claire, and Claire let him. Claire's fingers tightened around her bag. I knew the theft allegation was false. You knew because I showed you the invoices. Yes. You said challenging him would cost you the preservation vote. Yes. So you thanked me for protecting the tenants, then signed the letter calling me unstable. Claire's face lost color. I signed a statement, saying your judgment had become unreliable. You used a polite word for unstable. I did. Lila turned toward me. She will tell you she was trying to save a building. She already has. Then ask how many people she is willing to break before a building counts as saved. Claire did not defend herself. That restraint did not make the old harm smaller. Lila removed a flash drive from the bag. This contains emails, contractor messages, and a voice memo Adrian left when he thought he was calling his assistant. Evelyn sealed it inside an evidence pouch. Why keep it? Because I knew one day he would need somebody else to be the liar. Her gaze moved to Adrian's agreement. Looks like he found him. The bell rang again. A deputy entered with an envelope for me. The county ethics office had opened a preliminary fraud inquiry. I was ordered to preserve all communications with Claire, the trust, and the tenants. Marisol arrived before the deputy left. She read the notice. If Adrian submits his complaint first, his version becomes the frame investigators begin with. And if I sign, the shop is protected, but you become his witness. Tess pushed the agreement toward me. Protect Cal and Benny. Cal wiped metal dust from his hands. Do not use me as the reason. You have a mortgage. I also have a name. Benny leaned against the cabinet. My daughter's spare room is ugly, but it is not a grave. Neither man gave me permission to sacrifice myself for him. That should have made the choice easier. It did not. By afternoon, the city canceled the courthouse work. The bank's appraiser called to confirm access. A supplier froze our account. Claire stayed through none of it. She left with Lila after Evelyn asked them to provide separate statements. Before going, she stopped beside the door. I will not ask you to refuse Adrian's offer. You already told me to consider it. I was wrong. You were afraid. Yes. Those are not opposites. No. She opened the door. I am going to tell the board what I did to Lila before Adrian tells them what version serves him. You may lose the trust. I may deserve to. After she left, I carried Adrian's agreement upstairs. The cot had been folded against the wall to make space for bank records. Rain pressed against the small window. My mother's apron hung near the radiator. Marisol sat at the table while I read the statement again. The first paragraph was true. Claire had recruited me because she needed a husband. The second was true. I had accepted money while facing foreclosure. The third bent the truth. It said every service I performed for the tenants supported the appearance of a genuine marriage. The final paragraph broke it. It said I had never formed a personal commitment to Claire or the residents. Can I sign everything except that? Adrian will withdraw the offer. If I sign it, can the investigators still use Lila's evidence? Yes. So the buildings might survive. They might. And the shop survives. Yes. Marisol folded her hands. You are asking whether one lie is acceptable if enough people benefit. My mother would have signed. Did she tell you that? She did whatever kept us housed. She also filed the repair request you carry in your pocket. My hand found the folded page. She asked before she fixed it herself. Marisol said, Do not erase that part because endurance is easier to admire. I uncapped the pen. The tip touched the signature line. Downstairs, the front bell rang, followed by Tess calling my name. She came up holding my phone. You left this charging. A message glowed on the screen. It was from Adrian. Make sure the 12B files are cleared before Reed changes his mind. A second message arrived. Wrong message. Then both disappeared. Tess stared at the blank screen. Did you see it? Yes. Marisol took the phone without touching the display. Cloud backup may preserve the notification. The pen remained between my fingers. Adrian had sent the message to the man he was trying to make his witness. Not because he was careless, because he had become certain I would obey. I set the pen down. For years, my worst habit had been letting people mistake my silence for agreement. Adrian had built his offer on that mistake. This time, he had written too much before I answered. The final hearing began with every chair occupied and the aisle lined with people who had nowhere else to stand. The bank's appraiser sat behind Tess. Cal and Benny shared the end of a bench with their work coats across their knees. Mrs. Grant had brought tenants from all three buildings. Mr. Alvarez held the repaired chair arm with both hands. Claire sat at the front table beside Evelyn. She had given the board her statement about Lila before sunrise. By noon, the trustees had suspended her voting authority and appointed an independent chair. Adrian stood across from her with the confidence of a man who had already decided what everyone else would remember. Marisol stopped me outside the doors. You do not have to testify. Yes, I do. You may expose yourself to the fraud inquiry. I already exposed myself when I signed. This time I know what the signature costs. She handed me a folder containing Adrian's mistaken message, Lila's authenticated copies, and a report confirming that the records from apartment 12B had been created years before Claire met me. I added my mother's repair request. That page is personal, Marisol said. So was the damage. Adrian began with the marriage. He walked the council through the payment, the foreclosure, the shared address, and every photograph Owen Pike had taken. Then he displayed the statement I had refused to sign. This settlement was rejected only after Mr. Reed learned that hidden records might protect him. Marisol leaned toward me. He is making your refusal look strategic. Adrian turned toward Claire. Miss Whitmore has admitted recruiting a financially distressed man, concealing material risks, and using marriage to influence trust control. Claire rose. The chair ordered her to wait. She sat again. Adrian wanted her angry. He wanted me silent. He wanted Lila to sound resentful, and the tenants grateful enough to be foolish. Every person had been assigned a part before entering. The chair called my name. Adrian approached the witness table. Did Claire Whitmore offer you $45,000 to marry her? Yes. Were you facing foreclosure? Yes. Did you conceal the arrangement from your family, employees, and the residents? Yes. A murmur crossed the benches. Did your presence help Claire create the appearance of a stable household? Yes. Then there is no dispute about the central facts. There is a dispute about the story you built from them. He smiled. You accepted money. I did. You performed repairs for people whose testimony could benefit your wife. I repaired what was broken. That is a convenient distinction. It is the only one that matters. The chair allowed me to continue. I faced the tenants. I should have told you about the agreement before I entered your homes. I let shame make that decision for me. I thought silence protected the shop and kept Claire's plan from hurting anyone. Mrs. Donnelly lowered her eyes. It did the opposite. My silence gave someone else the right to explain every choice I made. Adrian tapped the table. Mr. Reed is giving a speech. No. I am answering the question you never asked. His fingers stopped. I took Claire's money. I did not take your version of me. Adrian recovered. Your motives cannot authenticate evidence. No. The evidence does that. Marisol submitted Lila's copies and the technical report. The records examiner confirmed that the files predated the marriage, the burst pipe, and the restructuring dispute. Lila testified next. She admitted moving emergency money without approval. You violated trust procedure, Adrian said. Yes. You concealed the transfer. I concealed families from a winter without heat. You expect the board to trust a confessed rule breaker? No. I expect them to read the invoices. The same money Adrian called missing had paid for boiler repairs. Claire was called after her. She admitted signing the statement that damaged Lila's career. Did Adrian force you? The chair asked. No. Did you know the theft allegation was false? Yes. Why did you sign? Because I believed saving one property justified sacrificing one person. Lila did not thank her. Claire kept speaking. I used the same reasoning when I chose Jonah. I called it necessity because control sounded uglier. Adrian stood. This hearing concerns fraud, not regret. Claire turned toward him. It concerns the method you taught everyone around you. The chair ordered them to stop. Evelyn introduced the maintenance estimates. The copies from 12B showed lower repair costs than the versions presented to the board. Adrian called them papers assembled by a dismissed manager and discovered by a paid husband. Marisol handed me my mother's request. I read the failed radiator and the instruction telling her to repair it herself. My mother fixed the cabinet. She kept us warm with the oven. For years, I remembered that as strength. My thumb rested over her signature. It was strength. It was also neglect. Adrian folded his arms. A painful memory does not prove tampering. No. So let us discuss the originals. His attention sharpened. We recovered an original set of board minutes, I said. Adrian answered before the chair could. Those originals were destroyed. The words landed without drama. Evelyn leaned forward. No one said the recovered document was among the destroyed originals. Adrian's face remained composed, but his hand closed around the remote. I meant the old records were scheduled for disposal. Which records? Marisol asked. The obsolete maintenance archive. The minutes were not stored there. The remote cracked against the table. A battery rolled across the floor. Adrian glanced toward Owen Pike instead of the board. Pike pushed his chair back. Adrian spoke too fast. This is theater. Claire arranged the marriage. Lila violated procedure. And Reed entered a sealed apartment with a key Claire gave him. The apartment was flooding, Mrs. Grant called. Adrian pointed toward her. And you have defended him from the beginning. Mrs. Grant rose. I defended the man who turned off the water. I am listening to the lawyer who knew which papers were supposed to be gone. The chair struck the table until the chamber settled. Marisol submitted Adrian's mistaken message. The preserved notification appeared on the screen. Make sure the 12B files are cleared before Reed changes his mind. Adrian stared at it. That message is incomplete. You deleted it, Marisol said. I sent it to the wrong person. What did you mean by cleared? Transferred to counsel. Before Jonah changed his mind about what? Adrian turned toward me. Fear appeared without anger to cover it. Who gave you the originals? He asked. The chamber went still. I had never said anyone gave them to me. Adrian's eyes moved to Lila, then Claire, then the sealed evidence box beside Evelyn. For months, he had controlled every room by deciding who would carry the blame. Now he could not identify which witness frightened him most. The chair suspended the proposed sale and referred the altered records, deleted messages, and settlement offer to the county prosecutor. Adrian's authority as trust counsel was revoked pending investigation. Claire's voting power was not restored. An independent administrator would oversee the buildings while the board reviewed her conduct. The decision saved no one completely. The bank still had an appraiser. The city contract remained canceled. Lila did not receive her career back. The tenants still faced months of repairs. When the hearing ended, reporters crowded the aisle. Claire remained seated. She did not cross toward me or reach for my hand. She let the truth stand without turning our marriage into its reward. Cal waited by the doors. "You kept the shop out of your speech," he said. "It was not the reason I told the truth." He nodded. "Good." Tess gave me the workshop keys. Mrs. Grant returned the brass key to apartment 12B. "The restriction is suspended." I closed my fingers around both sets. One opened the place my mother built. The other opened the place where people had taught her not to ask twice. Claire passed behind me with Evelyn. Her shoulder brushed my coat. Neither of us stopped. The papers were finally dying. That did not mean we were ready to begin. Claire came to the workshop 2 days after the hearing, with a document ending our marriage. Not the contract. The marriage. She placed it on my mother's workbench, beside the brass key to apartment 12B. "The court can finalize it whenever you sign," she said. No lawyers stood behind her. No driver waited outside. She wore a plain wool coat and carried nothing that looked like a solution. "You want a divorce? I want you to have one available." That is not the same answer. "No." Claire rested both hands on the bench. "The agreement is dead. The trust has no claim on you. If you stay married now, I need to know you are staying, because you chose it after knowing everything. And if I sign, I will not challenge it." Her voice held until the final word. The bank appraiser had visited that morning. He photographed my mother's machines and left without telling us whether the numbers would bury us. The city had not restored the courthouse work. Adrian had been charged with evidence tampering and attempted coercion, but charges were not convictions. His attorney was already calling the mistaken message a misunderstanding. Nothing had become simple because the truth finally had witnesses. I turned the papers toward me. Claire slid the key beside them. "It opens the house," she said. "It does not obligate you to enter." I carried both upstairs and put them beneath my cot. For 6 weeks, I did not sign. I also did not go home. Cal and Benny worked reduced hours. Tess negotiated until the bank delayed foreclosure while we completed private repair jobs. Cal never apologized for leaving the hearing. He arrived early each morning and made coffee strong enough to remove paint. One afternoon, he placed his mug beside mine. "I believed the contract before I believed you. You had reasons. Still happened. It was as close as either of us could get." Mrs. Donnelly brought a broken drawer and paid the full rate. Mr. Alvarez came with her, but not everyone returned. Some people had watched my signature fill a wall. A verdict did not shrink it afterward. Claire and I met on Tuesdays at a diner beyond the county line. The first time, she arrived with documents. I sent them back to her car. The second time, she tried to pay before we ordered. I moved the check to my side. "Do not turn breakfast into a negotiation." I was trying to be considerate. "You were trying to control the ending." She removed her hand. "You are right." She hated saying it. That helped. We spoke about ordinary things because ordinary things could not hide behind necessity. She learned Benny put too much pepper on eggs. I learned she read mystery novels from the last page backward. She admitted the independent administrator had found years of neglected repairs and would keep her away from voting decisions until the review ended. "Does that frighten you?" I asked. "Yes." "What are you doing about it?" "Answering questions without preparing everyone else's answers first." Near the end of the 6th week, the bank accepted a repayment plan based on the shop's private orders. Tess had to approve every transfer above payroll. The business survived, but surviving looked smaller than I had imagined. One employee shift disappeared. The courthouse benches went somewhere else. My cot remained above the shop. On Friday evening, Claire came carrying Mr. Alvarez's chair. One runner had split during the move back from the hearing. "He asked whether you could repair it again," she said. "Why did he send it with you?" "He did not." I offered to carry it. "That sounds dangerously close to asking." "I am practicing." I turned the chair over. The break followed the grain beside my first repair. Fixing it would leave a darker seam, Claire noticed. "Can you make it invisible?" "No." "Will it hold?" "Yes." "Then do that." We worked without calling it working together. Claire held the lamp while I cleaned the joint. She passed clamps when I asked, instead of deciding which one I needed. Night settled against the windows. Claire wiped her hands on a rag. "I should go." "Yes." She waited. I had spent years believing the person who left first kept the most dignity. It was another kind of control, only quieter. "Dinner?" I asked. Her fingers stopped on the coat button. "Tonight?" "Yes." "At Whitmore House?" "Dinner first." A careful smile reached her face. No contract? No contract. We walked there instead of taking her car. The courtyard lights had been replaced. Scaffolding covered one wall. A notice near the mailboxes listed approved repairs and responsible contractors. Mrs. Grant was changing a light bulb in the lobby. She saw us and did not smile. Mr. Alvarez wants his chair before Sunday. He will have it. Her gaze moved to Claire. The heating meeting is Monday. I will attend if the administrator asks. As a listener? Claire took a breath. As a listener. Mrs. Grant returned to the ladder. Trust was not applause. Sometimes it was being allowed to stand in the building long enough to hear what you had done. We stopped outside the manager's apartment. Claire stepped aside. She did not tell me it was my home. She did not reach for the handle or ask whether I had forgiven her. The key felt heavier than metal should. I remembered it sliding across my workbench beside a contract and a price. I remembered my mother's repair request trembling in my wet hand. I still heard the whisper from town hall whenever a stranger studied my face too long. He used them. The wound had not learned the truth as quickly as everyone else had. Claire waited without filling the space. I put the key into the lock. The workshop key touched it inside my pocket. Brass against steel. One opened the place my mother built after nobody helped her. The other opened the house where I had learned that accepting help was not the same as surrendering the right to choose. I turned the key. Claire entered after me. Not before. Some people do not destroy you by shouting. They do it by arranging the true pieces of your life until everyone believes the wrong picture. And sometimes the person who loves you does not repair that picture for you. They step back, admit the part they damaged, and leave you room to speak for yourself. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments whether someone has ever made you fight for the truth of your own life. And if you want more stories about people who find dignity before they find love, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.